The dalil or the adilla, the evidences of the jumhur, of most of the fuqaha, specifically the traditional madhabs, we would humbly say is of two types. That which is authentic but indirect. It's sahih, لكنه غير صريح. It's authentic, but it isn't directly to the point. And the second type of dalil, or proofs and evidences that they have, is that which is صريح غير صحيح. That which is directly to the point, but is inauthentic. And inshallah ta'ala, if we have enough time, getting into those hadiths, we'll also see how some of those hadiths which are sarih are still relatively muhtamal, غير صريح. They're still indirect in light of other texts. Last but not least, if they were authentic, or those that are authentic, if they were frank, they still wouldn't be enough to challenge and to contend with the many other ahadith which are clearly authentic, which are kathira, they're abundant, they're mutakathira, mutanawwi'ah. They have different styles and different types of dilal, as we already previously explained. Khairan, inshallah. So the first hadith that they have, or the first proof that they use, is the narration of Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. This narration here has been collected by Imam Ahmad in his Musnad and others, and it states, صلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في فضاء ليس بين يديه شيء. Is that one day the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم was praying out in the desert, in the fada, open, empty space, and hadith says ليس بين يديه شيء, and there was nothing in front of him. Nothing in front of him. So this hadith clearly shows and proves that they say he didn't have a sutrah, proving that it's only recommended. But those other hadiths that he did it, he commanded it, that it's only ala sabil al-istihbab wa nadb. This is recommended and not mandatory. The answer of those ulama is, first and foremost, this hadith is da'if. They say this chain of narration is weak. Okay, whereas we have a narrator whose name is Al-Hajjaj ibn Artah. Al-Hajjaj ibn Artah, who's a famous narrator, but he's very well known, he's famous, but he's weak. He's not strong at all. And there are other issues as well with regards to his tadlis. Khairan, inshallah. So that's the first problem with that hadith. How can we take a hadith in which it has a problematic isnad, at best it's problematic, let alone weak, and go against the other hadith? Some of them are in Bukhari or Muslim, some in Sahih Muslim, Sunan Abi Dawud, which have asanid sahih, authentic chains. Khairan, inshallah. And Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah, he also declared this hadith to be weak as well. Moving forward, hadith number 2 is narrated by Fadl ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, or anhuma. قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أو قال أتانا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ونحن في بادية لنا ومعه عباس فصل في الصحراء ليس بين يديه سترة وحمارة لنا وكلبة تعبثان بين يديه فما بال ذلك. Narrated Al-Fadl ibn Abbas, who reported one day the Messenger of Allah came to us, and نحن في بادية, we were out in the desert once more, and we had Abbas with us, and the Messenger of Allah, he offered the salah, and there was no sutrah in front of him, whatsoever. And there was a she-ass, a female donkey, and a female dog as well, that were playing and running around in front of him. They walked in front of him, and he didn't do anything about it whatsoever. This hadith has been collected by Imam Abu Dawud, Imam An-Nasa'i, Imam Ahmad, and others. Before we get into the isnad, you can clearly see that the matan is mushkil, fihi nakara. The matan is clearly polemic, and it just doesn't sound right. In light of all of those other hadiths, that the Prophet was praying in the desert with nothing in front of him, and having these two animals walking in front of him without no care, no concern whatsoever. That just doesn't make sense. So that's before we even get into the isnad. And as we have explained in many classes, lessons, and lectures, the ulama of hadith, they didn't just criticize the isnad. They would criticize the matan, the text. Oftentimes, Some ulama, some bahithin, they say that's the asl. The asl is the matan and not the isnad. Khairin, inshallah. So, moving to the traditional way, this isnad, first and foremost, is we have certain problems. Mathalan, for example, first and foremost, this isnad is reported by Muhammad ibn Umar ibn Ali, from Abbas ibn Ubaidullah ibn Abbas, from Al-Fadl ibn Abbas, who narrated the story. Khairan inshaAllah ta'ala. Muhammad ibn Umar ibn Ali is relatively unknown. That's first and foremost. Ibn Hazm rahimahullah ta'ala, he declared this hadith to be weak because of inqita', an inconsistent chain. It's not ittisal. Okay, whereas Abbas did not meet Al-Fadl. He never met Al-Fadl ibn Abbas. Okay, we have Abbas ibn Ubaidullah ibn Abbas who narrated from Fadl ibn Abbas. So that's another illa with the isnad. And others, they say that la yu'raf haluhu, he's unknown as well. He's unknown as well. Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah, he declared this hadith to be munkar. He said it was munkar. He said it was rejected. Meaning, we have two narrators which are relatively unknown, and we have inqita', a missing, lack of ittisal, lack of connection in the chain. And the matan, as we clearly said, is munkar. Khair inshallah, moving forward. The third proof that they use is narrated by Abdullah bin Abbas radiallahu anhuma, and this hadith, in contrast to the previous two, is in the Sahihain, is in Bukhari and Muslim. It says, أقبلت راكبا على حمار أتان وأنا يومئذ قد نهزت الاحتلام ورسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يصلي بالناس بمنى إلى غير جدار فمررت بين يدي بعض الصف فنزلت وأرسلت الأتان ترتع ودخلت في الصف فلم ينكر ذلك علي أحد. Ibn Abbas says that one day I went to the Messenger of Allah and I was riding a donkey, okay, a she donkey. And on that, he says, at that time I was starting puberty. I still was a young man. The Messenger of Allah was making the salah at Mina. He was making salah at Mina and Hajj. Ila ghayri jidarin. And there wasn't a wall in front of him, with no wall in front of him. So therefore, I walked between the rows and I sent the donkey to walk and to feed, to graze. I then entered the salah, and no one criticized me. No one said anything about me. No one says, don't do that, taqillah, anything like that. So once more, the highlighting point from the hadith, pay close attention. It says, فَصَلَّى إِلَى غَيْرِ جِدَارٍ. He prayed towards غَيْرِ جِدَارٍ. He did not pray towards a wall. That's number one. Number two, he himself walked between the rows, and the donkey as well walked between the rows. This hadith is in the Sahihain. First and foremost is, we already previously mentioned that the first two narrations, okay, Hadith ibn Abbas and Hadith of Fadl ibn Abbas, are weak. And we don't take something that's weak to go against that which is clear and authentic and strong. Alright? And even if, khair inshallah, as far as the Hadith of Abdullah ibn Abbas, this one here, in the Sahihain, then it doesn't mention that he never prayed towards the sutra. It just says that he didn't pray towards the wall. They were in Mina. What buildings were there? What construction was there? How can you say that this is a proof that you can't pray towards that you don't have to pray towards the sutra, when we already have proven that the Prophet ﷺ used to do it, and he used to have it. He used to carry the harba. They would bring the anaza. They would take it with him. They would place it in front of him. So that's the asl. The asl is the Prophet would use it all the time when he was home, when he was traveling. So the asl applies here, is that he prayed at Mina and he had a harba in front of him, or a saddle, or a camel, or some type of a man's back, something in front of him. And just because it says ila ghayri jidar, it does not mean that it was ila ghayri sutra. Ila ghayri sutra. Khairan inshallah. Also, some of the ulama, they say that this hadith proves is that the Imam's sutra is the sutra for those who are behind him. The Imam's sutra is the sutra for those who come behind him, who pray behind him. And they said Ibn Abbas only walked in front of the rows and not in front of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So that is rejected. Khairan inshaAllah ta'ala. So that is their third proof and their third evidence. Now, there's a version of this hadith in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad that says, listen carefully to this one. It says, وركزت العنزة بين يدي النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بعرفات فصلى إليها والحمار يمر من وراء العنزة. It says that the anaza, the spear or the staff, it was placed in front of the Prophet ﷺ at Arafah, and he prayed towards it, and the donkey walked in front of it, and not in front of the Prophet ﷺ and his actual sutra. Khairan inshaAllah ta'ala. Another proof, the fourth proof that they use, is also authentic. That's the narration of Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. And this hadith, it's the hadith of Abdullah ibn Umar, not Abdullah ibn Abbas. And this hadith is found in the Sahihain as well. And it states, Ibn Umar, he said, دخل النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم البيت وأسامة بن زيد وعثمان بن طلحة وبلال فأطال ثم خرجا وكنت أول الناس دخل على إثره فسألت بلالا أين صلى فقال بين العمودين. Ibn Umar says that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he entered the Bayt, meaning the Kaaba in Mecca. And with him was Usama ibn Zayd, Uthman ibn Talha, and Bilal. It then says, ثم, it says, فأطال ثم خرج. So he made salah for a very long time, then he left. And the very first person that entered after the Prophet ﷺ was me. I asked Bilal, where did he pray? Bilal said, بين العمودين. He prayed between two columns. He prayed between two columns. So they say this authentic hadith shows that the Prophet did not pray towards the amud, but he prayed between the amudain. He didn't have a spear, he didn't poke it in the ground, there was no wall, whatever the case may be. This is what they say. Once again, this hadith is authentic, but it is not sarih. It does not clearly negate and say he didn't pray towards the sutra. At best, he said he prayed towards two pillars. How close was he to the wall? Was he in the middle of the Kaaba? Did he have anything in front of him? There was no weapon, no sword, nothing that he placed in front of him whatsoever. What was the ground of the Kaaba at that time? Was it wood? Was it stone? Was it gravel? These details aren't mentioned. So, at best, this is muhtamal, this is mujmal. It's inexplicit proof. It's authentic, but it's inexplicit. The dilala is not right, it's strong, directly to the point, like those other narrations. So one may say that it wouldn't make too much sense, logically, for us to do away with those other ahadith, which are clearly strong, clearly frank, right to the point, that show that the Prophet ﷺ always used the sutra, always had the sutra, always dealt with the sutra at home and while he traveled. Khairan inshallah. So this, in general and brief, are the main proofs of the jumhur, of most of the ulama, with regards to the sutra being recommended and the sutra not being obligatory. Khairan inshallah ta'ala. Khairan. Moving forward, the concept of what breaks the salah. Does a donkey break the salah? Does a woman break the salah? We'll get into that within that in a bit, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now let's mention, we mentioned, I believe, the kalam of Shawkani. We also mentioned the kalam of Shaykh al-Albani rahimahullah with regards to the sutra in it being obligatory. Here we have a few statements from some of the people of knowledge of the past. An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says in his book Al-Majmu' Sharh al-Muhadhab. He says, السنة للمصلي أن يكون بين يديه سترة من جدار أو سارية أو غيرهما ويدنو منها. ونقل الشيخ أبو حامد الإجماع فيه. والسنة أن لا يزيد ما بينه وبينها على 3 أذرع. Nawawi, he said in his book Al-Majmu', he says the sunnah is for the one who's making the salah to place a sutra in front of him, whether it be a wall, a pillar, column, and for him to get close to it. He then says, Sheikh Abu Hamid, meaning here Al-Ghazali, he says he mentioned that there's ijma' regarding this. Ijma', that's the sunnah. And he says, and the sunnah is for a person not to be so far and not so close. He says, 3 arm lengths, or the lengths of 4 arms. We'll get into that later, how far you should be from the sutra. What's important is that Nawawi says is that is the sunnah. Al-Mirdawi, he says in his book Al-Insaf, he's a Hanbali. Obviously Nawawi is a Shafi'i. ويستحب أن he says قوله يستحب أن يصلي إلى سترة مثل آخرة الرحل. هذا المذهب وعليه جماهير الأصحاب وقطع به أكثرهم وأطلق في الواضح الوجوب. Al-Mirdawi, he says in the book Al-Insaf, quoting from a previous or earlier Hanbali scholar, when he says yustahab, it's recommended for a person to pray towards a sutrah, and the sutrah should be like the back of a saddle. He says this is the madhab, meaning this is the Hanbali madhab, that's the mu'tamad. And upon this view of most of the Hanbali ulama, and most of them said for sure this is it. And some of them, he says in the book Al-Wadih, they said that it's wujub, wajib. So we benefit from this statement in Al-Insaf. Some of the Hanbali ulama, they also said that it was wajib as well. Some of them said that it was what? That it was wajib as well. Khayran, inshallah. Ibn Qudamah rahimahullah, he says in his book Al-Mughni, فصل ترك السترة بمكة وغيرها فصل ولا بأس أن يصلي بمكة إلى غير سترة وروي ذلك عن ابن الزبير وعطاء ومجاهد قال الأثرم. طيب, he goes on. Ibn Qudamah speaks about praying in Mecca, which is an issue that we're going to mention later, hopefully, until the point in which he says, وَلَوْ صَلَّى فِي غَيْرِ مَكَّةَ إِلَى غَيْرِ سُتْرَةٍ لَمْ يَكُنْ بِهِ بَأْسٌ. He says, and if he prays towards other than the sutra, and other than Mecca, no problem. لَمْ يَكُنْ بِهِ بَأْسٌ. He then goes on to mention some of the proofs and evidences that we previously discussed. He says, وَلِأَنَّ السُّتْرَةَ لَيْسَتْ شَرْطًا فِي الصَّلَاةِ وَإِنَّمَا هِيَ مُسْتَحَبَّةٌ. The second proof after those evidences, he mentioned a few of those hadiths. One is authentic, which is not frank, as we explained, and one is frank, which is totally weak, totally munkar. As a side note, that's a problem with the madhabs and the traditional books of fiqh, is that they mention ma habba wa dab. They mention any proof, any evidence, without any type of critical, voracious investigation or mentioning of it. Not saying that they don't know of it. But when it comes to their opponents, the Hanafis, the Malikis, the Shafi'is, they will critique their adillah and say that it's weak and it's this and it's that. And that's very problematic in the books of fiqh. He says, listen carefully to the Istidlal ibn Qudamah. He says that it's not a condition of the salah. Praying towards the sutra is not a shart. So therefore it's recommended. Tayyib, if it's not a condition of the salah, does that mean it's not obligatory? Just because it's not a condition of the salah? He says, قال أحمد, Imam Ahmad said, في الرجل يصلي في فضاء ليس بين يديه سترة ولا خط صلاته جائزة وقال أحب أن يفعل فإن لم يفعل يجزيه. Imam Ahmad said that when a man is praying in the middle of nowhere and there's no sutra in front of him, nor any line, and that's the issue that we'll get into later, is it permissible or from the sunnah to draw a line? He says, then inshallah his salah is valid. But I would prefer for him to make and give himself a sutra, and if not, then inshallah his salah will be valid. Khayran, inshallah. Obviously, we're not dealing with the issue of it being valid or not, the salat being valid or not, the sutra being a shart or the salat or not. Khayran, inshallah ta'ala. Another way of looking at the proofs and evidences is the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ said he used the sutra is qawli, is a statement. And those hadiths in which he's claimed to have prayed ila ghayri jidar, other than to something that wasn't a wall, even though that يعني هذه اللفظة فيها ما فيها من الكلام, that word in itself, even in the Sahihain, is some issues with regards to it. Right there. Well, we're not going to get into that. We're not going to go that deep right now. Al-Muhim is that the Prophet ﷺ said something, and then we have something which he supposedly did. If there's no way of harmonizing between both, then we would يقدم القول على الفعل. The statement comes before the action. All right? Let alone what some of the people of knowledge have said, as we previously mentioned. Ibn Daqiq al-Eid, he said, وَلَا يَلْزَمُ مِنْ عَدَمِ الْجِدَارِ عَدَمِ السُّتْرَةِ. They say just because there was no wall does not mean that there wasn't any sutra. خيرا inshallah ta'ala. طيب. Last but not least, the famous book Al-Fiqh على المذاهب الأربعة, Fiqh according to the four traditional schools. It says وأما حكمها فهو الندب فيندب للمصلي اتخاذ هذه السترة باتفاق. وقد عرفت أن الشافعية والحنابلة لا يفرقون بين المندوب والسنة، فيقولون أن اتخاذ السترة سنة كما يقولون أنه مندوب، على أن الحنفي والمالكي الذين يقولون أن اتخاذ السترة مندوب أقل من السنة، فهم يقولون إذا صلى شخص في طريق الناس بدون سترة ومر أحد بين يديه بالفعل يأثم لعدم احتياطه بصلاته في طريق الناس. وأما الشافعية والحنابلة فإنهم يقولون لا إثم فيه وإنما يكره فقط كما سيأتي في إلى آخره. In this book it says that the ruling of the sutra is recommended. He says that it's recommended to take a sutra bittifaq, according to all of the ulama. And then he goes on and speak on some issues, such as the difference between mandub and sunnah, what the Hanafi say, the Maliki say. Some of them say that it's not absolutely sunnah, but it's permissible, but not like high sunnah. Okay? And he speaks on the issues of a person praying in the road without a sutra. If people walk in front of him, are the people sinful or is he sinful? Khairan inshallah. That's all we want with that right now. So that's a discussion in brief with regards to the ruling of the sutra regarding the majority of the ulama, and a small patch or a small group of those other ulama with regards to it being mandatory or not. Khair inshallah. Let's move forward. The next issue that we wish to mention is, how tall should the sutra be? How tall should the sutra be? We have three main views among the people of knowledge. Not necessarily a debate on it, what's permissible, what's haram, what's mandatory, but on what's best. Some of them say that the sutra should be قدر الذراع, a forearm in length. Some say عظم الذراع, like an elbow, like the last piece of one's forearm. Okay. Some of them they may say with more or less distance, obviously, or more or less length. The sutra or the akhir al-rahl, the back of a saddle, the wooden piece of a saddle, it varies in its length. Some saddles are long, tall, some are short. So it'll be very difficult and also very hard to scientifically prove that. Some of the different ulama who made bahth, they say that it's approximately about 40 to khair inshallah. Al-Muhim, they differ on the exact length of the sutra, how tall it should be, all right, what is recommended and what isn't. What's important is that there isn't anything which the ulama of Islam can totally agree on. It isn't something that they totally agree on. طيب? Khairan inshallah ta'ala. However, what's recommended, all right, what's recommended is the hadith that says مؤخرة الرحل or آخر الرحل, the back of a saddle. Okay? Any other narrations with regards to ولو بسهم, even if it's an arrow. Alright? Even if it's an arrow. طيب? So therefore, it should be at least taller than the back of a saddle. The proof for this is the hadith in Sahih Muslim. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she narrated, she said, سئل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عن سترة المصلي فقال مثل مؤخرة الرحل. When the Messenger of Allah was asked about the sutra of the one making salah, he said like the back of a rahal, the back of a saddle. النووي رحمه الله تعالى, he says, وفي الحديث الندب إلى السترة بين يدي المصلي وبيان أن أقل السترة مؤخرة الرحل وهي قدر عظم الذراع وهو نحو ثلثي ذراع ويحصل بأي شيء أقامه بين يديه هكذا. He says, this hadith teaches us that it's recommended for a person to pray towards a sutra that's no shorter than عظم الذراع. He says 1/3 of a forearm in length. He says, and a sutra can be of any length. Anything that he places in front of him, it is not mandatory for it to be of a certain height. Ibn Qudama rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وَقَدْرُ السُّتْرَةِ فِي طُولِهَا ذِرَاءٌ أَوْ نَحْوُهُ. He says the length of the sutra is like a forearm, or something like a forearm. قال الأثرم سئل أبو عبد الله عن آخرة الرحل كم مقدارها قال ذراع كذا قال عطاء ذراع وبهذا قال الثوري وأصحاب الرأي وروي عن أحمد أنها قدر عظم الذراع وهذا قول مالك والشافعي. He goes on to say that Imam Ahmed was asked by Athram about the length of a sutra, and the Ahmed said dhira, forearm. And others, they say عظم dhira, 1/3 of the forearm. Khair inshallah. What's important is that the saddle, it differs in its length. What we can agree upon and what we can say is a recommended length is at least a forearm. And the forearm, according to the fuqaha, they differ on exactly how long it is. What's a dhira? It's not actually a forearm. Obviously, men's arms are longer than others, shorter than others. But they say it's from the elbow to the middle finger. Elbow to the middle finger. And we'll get bid'night ta'ala on what's the exact distance or length. Khair inshallah. As far as the width of the sutra, then obviously there is no specific width. It could be an arrow, a staff, a stick. It doesn't have to be of a certain width. All right, but the length is the thing in which the scholars of Islam mention was preferable. We've previously explained that it should be a forearm. So let's say, to make things easy with regards to a specific length, make your own forearm. You see your middle finger to your elbow, and you make that your what? The distance of your sutra. So that could be a chair, obviously someone's back, obviously the wall. It could be the end of the bed, praying towards a bed. One could have a book bag that stands up, a suitcase in the airport. Naam. Tayyib. You go into the masjid, oftentimes they have those little wooden prayer thingies. All right, those little carved out pieces of wood that the people use. They're shaped in the shape of a mihrab or of a masjid. All right, and they use those as well. Many of them are oftentimes shorter than a forearm's length. But we said it's not necessarily mandatory, but preferable. Khairan inshallah ta'ala. Moving forward. The next issue is how much space should be between you and the sutra. How much space should be between you and the sutra. All right. Some of the ulama of Islam, they say that it should be ثلاثة أذرع, 3 forearms, a length between your feet and your sutra. Others, they say it should be based off of how much sujood you can make. Some say mamar shah, when you actually place your head on the ground of a sheep can pass by. What's important is the view that seems to be correct is that perhaps 3 forearms length between you and your sutra when you're standing, And when you actually make the sujood, the mamar al-shah, the passing of a sheep between your head and the sutrah. And your head should not be directly too close on the sutrah. If you're praying in back of someone, your head should not bump their back. It should not touch their back. It should not hit their back. Khairan inshallah ta'ala. That's ala sabil al-taqreeb. Some of the ulama, they say 3 forearms. Others, they say the sujood. Khairan inshallah ta'ala. And it shouldn't be any further than what? A person's, or the 3 forearms. Khairan inshallah. طيب. Moving forward. النووي رحمه الله تعالى, he says, كان بين أو قوله كان بين مصلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وبين الجدار ممر الشاة يعني بالمصلي أو بالمصلى موضع السجود وفيه أن سنة قرب المصلي من سترته. Nawawi explains this, that what's meant by mamar al-shah, the walkway of a sheep, is the distance that it takes for a person to make the sujood. A distance for a person to make the sujood. طيب. Khair inshallah. He also says in the sunnah is for a person to get close to the sutrah and not be far away. For a person to get close and not be far away. Khair inshallah. We mentioned a hadith as well in our previous lecture on the hadiths regarding the sutrah. Let's move forward with regards to some of the issues. The next issue is making a khat, drawing a line. What should we do? If you don't have a chair or a back or a column, then what do we do? It's an issue of khilaf. Some of the ulama, they say that you can draw a line, and others say that you shouldn't. Obviously, in our modern times, most masjids have carpet and not necessarily gravel or turab or rimal or ramal. It doesn't necessarily have sand or dust or dirt. So drawing a line is possible in the carpet. You can do it if you had a pen in your pocket or your finger and you went against the grain of the carpet and you made a darker shade line. That's possible. But obviously back in the day, one would take out his sword or spear and his bow and actually draw a line into the dirt or into the sand. So now we have making a line in the salah. Do you do that or not? Some say yes, some say no. They differ on the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, wardah, collected by Imam Ahmad in his Musnad, and Imam Abu Dawood, Imam Ibn Majah, and others as well. Hadith states, إذا صلى أحدكم فليجعل تلقاء وجهه شيئا فإن لم يجد شيئا فلينصب عصا فإن لم يجد عصا فليخط خطا ثم لا يضره من مر بين يديه. Hadith says, when one of you wishes to make salah, then he should put something in front of his face. Even this hadith that the ulama differ on its authenticity clearly shows the importance of the sutrah and that something should be in front of you. He says when one of you prays, he should put something in front of his face. If he doesn't have anything, then he should lay down a staff. If he doesn't find a staff, then he should draw a line. And if he does so, no one will bother him from those who pass in front of him. The ulama of Islam, they differ over the concept of this hadith being authentic or the hadith being da'if. Alright? Some of them say it's sahih, and others they say it's da'if. Okay? Some of them they say sahih, and some of them they say it's da'if. Khairan inshallah ta'ala. We have different aqwal of the ulama, and hadith da'if, al-isnad, la yasih. طيب, خير inshallah. Let's summarize it, because we're not studying that specific hadith in detail. So that's one issue. The next issue is the permissibility or impermissibility of walking in front of someone in the salah. Is it permissible or impermissible to walk in front of someone? Absolutely. Or only if they have a sutrah. In other words, if they don't have a sutrah, then you can walk in front of them or not. What's the rule on that? The hadith, which is the asl of this issue, is the narration of Abu Juhaym radiallahu anhu, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم لو يعلم المار بين يدي المصلي ماذا عليه لكان أن يقف 40 خيرا له من أن يمر بين يديه. Abu Juhaym narrated that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, the one who's passing in front of the musalli, the one who's making the salah, if he knew the sin that was upon him, it would be better for him to wait for 40. It would be better for him to wait for 40. We all know this hadith is in the Sahihain, Bukhari, and in Muslim. And hadith does not specify what's meant by 40. 40 days, 40 hours, 40 years, 40 weeks. Al-Muhim, 40. Al-Muhim, 40. Abu Nadr, he says, لا أدري قال 40 يوما أو شهرا أو سنة. He says, I don't know whether it was 40 days, 40 months, or 40 years. Khairan, inshallah. So that hadith clearly proves the impermissibility of walking in front of someone who's making the salah. An-Nawawi, he says about this hadith, فيه دليل على تحريم المرور فإن معنى الحديث النهي الأكيد والوعيد الشديد على ذلك. And says this hadith shows us it's impermissible to walk in front of the one who's making the salah, and it's a severe threat for those who do so. Ibn Hajar rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وَمُقْتَضَى ذَلِكَ أَنْ يُعَدَّ فِي الْكَبَائِرِ. He says, and it shows us is that this is what from the major sins. خير inshallah. Shawkani, he says in Nail al-Atar, والحديث يدل على أن المرور بين يدي المصلي من الكبائر الموجبة للنار وظاهر عدم الفرق بين صلاة الفرد والنفل. Shawkani says about this hadith, the zahir, that which is apparent from the hadith, or he says that which is hadith proves that it's haram and it's from the major sins which will take someone to the fire. And that which is zahir from the hadith, he says that which is apparent and taken is that it's no difference between the mandatory prayer and the recommended prayer. That you cannot walk in front of someone, period. At-Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, وَالْعَمَلُ عَلَيْهِ عِنْدَ أَهْلِ الْعِلْمِ كَرِهُ الْمُرُورَ بَيْنِ يَدَيِ الْمُصَلِّي. Khair. Moving forward. The next issue that we have is this hadith only applied to those who have a sutrah, or is it absolute? Also, someone who prays in the middle of the walkway and you have to go and the people have to leave the masjid, someone has to use the bathroom, a person is blocking the parking lot, so on and so forth. Some of the ulama, they say, not all of them, but some of them, they say that the hadith is dealing with those who have a sutrah. And others, they say it's absolute, it's general. Some say that if a person doesn't have a sutrah, they don't deserve this. And as we said, some say no, it's general, and that if you have to walk in front of them, then you yourself estimate the distance of 3-4 arms length from their feet to the ground, and then walk from beyond that point. Other ulama, they say that if a person is blocking the walkway in the middle of the road, the bathroom, the parking lot, and the person has to go, then there's no sin upon you, because they themselves tasabbaba fi ta'thim, they have caused people to fall into that sinful act, but it's not your fault, but it's actually their fault. Another issue, another mas'ala here is the concept of Mecca. Is the sutrah applicable to Mecca? Do you have to have a sutrah in Mecca? Can you block someone from walking in front of you in Mecca? Tayyib. Once more, the ulama of Islam, they differ on this issue, and many of them say that the major qaida of fiqh in al-mashaqqata tajlib al-taysir, difficulty demands necessity, or difficulty demands facilitation. They say that it's so crowded in Mecca that you don't have to stop someone from walking in front of you, because it's such a hardship and such a burden. And other ulama, they say the exact opposite. They say the Prophet never specified, and he said the salah is sacred in Mecca or any other place than Mecca. As far as Medina, then some of the modern day fuqaha, they may say that Medina takes the same ruling as Mecca. Me, myself, I've never come across the kalam of the ulama of the past regarding Medina being just like Mecca, whereas Medina is not as crowded, even though it does get crowded, but Medina is not mandatory. People have to go to the Kaaba to make Hajj and Umrah. Medina is not mandatory. Me, myself, when I was in Medina, subhanAllah, yani, not just the Prophet's masjid, but let's say you go to the masjid of the Miqat, Dhul Hulayfa, any place which is from the Mazarat, the place where the people visit for their Umrah and their Hajj, you'll find it very crowded, and people will walk in front of you, try to walk in front of you, and when you stop them, you stick out your arm, they'll fight with you and contest you. I remember once I was making salah in the Prophet's masjid, and the guy basically, he moved my hand out the way, and he walked by and he started cursing me while I was praying in the salah, started cursing, just like that. Or another person, they'll just start fussing and complaining as if you did something that's wrong, as if you're the one that's going against the sunnah. Obviously, the person who did it, or these people, they don't have beards. Their ihram clothing is beneath their ankles. They're musbil. They're not following the sunnah. Okay? They're normal, commoner Muslims. They don't have no knowledge, no care or concern about the deen and the sunnah. It's sad and unfortunate. And they attack you for trying to implement the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Obviously, we're not to get stuck on being sad, because the Prophet, he told us, إن الإسلام بدأ غريبا وسيعود غريبا كما بدأ فطوبى للغرباء. And Sahih Muslim, Abu Hurairah narrated that Islam began in something strange, and it will return in something strange as it began. Khairan, inshallah ta'ala. So therefore, if it's very crowded in Mecca, then that's one thing. Wala haraj. But if you do have the ability to protect your salat and teach the people the sunnah, and just think about it now, when we deal with these different principles of fiqh, making it easy, making it simple, no difficulty, are we helping the people? Are we aiding them? Or are we making it easier for them to persist upon ignorance and persist upon just being negligent and not having no consciousness? We have to ask ourselves these critical questions. Moving forward. Another issue is the ruling of stopping someone and fighting someone from coming in front of you. We previously mentioned in the narrations, the authentic reports that said, فَلْيُقَاتِلْ فَلْتُقَاتِلْ. You should hit him. You should fight him. He should fight him. So if it's mandatory to use the sutrah and not allow anyone to walk in front of you, the same rule applies to stopping someone from walking in front of you. Obviously, to the best of your ability. What's meant by this word, فَلْيُقَاتِلْهُ? All right? It means, أي فَلْيَدْفَعْهُ. Is that you should push this person and put your arm and your forearm in the person's chest, his neck, stick out your arm, block him, like you say, like a clothesline. Not swinging at a person, but extending your arm and refusing for this person to walk in front of you. Okay? So no one should be able to walk in front of you. And if a person tries to, then that's what you should do. فَإِنَّمَا هُوَ شَيْطَانٌ. Because it's only a shaitan. Or certain narrations, they may say, فَإِنَّمَا مَعَهُ الْقَرِينَ. They say that the qareen is with him. So what's meant by fight him is not to kill a person or to swing in a salat, but to use strength and to use force with regards to stopping the person. Tayyib, the ruling of this is mandatory, just like the sutrah is mandatory, and it's not just recommended. And there's no clear dalil saying that it's only, recommended. Nawawi, he says about this statement, وهذا الأمر بالدفع أمر ندب وهو ندب مؤكد أو متأكد ولا أعلم أحدا من أهل العلم أوجبه. Nawawi says, when the Prophet ﷺ says to stop him, to fight him, to push him, he says it's recommended, highly recommended, and I don't know of any scholar who said that it's mandatory. Ibn Hajar, he refuted Nawawi on this by saying, وقد صرح بوجوبه على الظاهر فكأن الشيخ لم يراجع كلامهم فيه أو لم يعتد بخلافهم. Ibn Hajar, he says, as if Nawawi didn't read the speech of Ahl al-Zahir, the ulama of the Zahiri madhab, the Zahiri school. He says, so either no, he didn't find out about it, or he didn't consider their khilaf to be considerable. It doesn't mean anything. As we've explained that before, it's not necessarily scientific to say that the ulama of the Zahir have no value whatsoever. Khairan, inshaAllah ta'ala. Imam Ahmed, once he was asked, and he said it was mandatory. Khairan, inshaAllah ta'ala. What's important is that if you say that it's mandatory to take the sutrah, and it's also mandatory to stop someone. Tayyib. The next issue is, what's meant by someone or something walking in front of you? What about an animal? Or is it just a human being? What about a small young child? We previously mentioned the Hadith of Ibn Abbas. Okay, it's been collected by Imam Ibn Khuzaymah and others, in which the Prophet ﷺ stopped the sheep from walking in front of him. Okay, he says, "Hatta alzaqa batnahu bil qibla." He put his belly against the wall, whatever was in front of him. Alayhi salatu wasalam. And other narrations on that as well we previously mentioned. Tayyib. Another issue is, tayyib, khair, inshallah. We'll suffice ourselves with that for now. Tayyib. With regards to moving in the salah, how much movement are you allowed to do? With regards to pushing someone and stopping someone, are you to walk towards someone? Are you to move and swing crazily in a salah? Or is it supposed to be a composed movement? We know that movement in a salah is of different types. Some movement in a salah is mandatory, some is recommended, some is disliked, some is haram, some is mubah, without no prescribed ruling, which is explained in other classes and other lessons. The next issue perhaps we can mention is the sutrah of the imam. We've previously explained that the sutrah of the imam is the sutrah for those who are praying behind him. Khairan, inshaAllah ta'ala. We mentioned that mas'ala in brief with the dalil as well. Then we have the issue of what breaks the salah. Does something break the salah or nothing break the salah? Perhaps bid'nah ta'ala will mention a separate class on that. What's important is, it's a mas'ala. This is how sometimes we study some of the masail fiqhiyya, murur. We run through them like this. Some of them we explain in detail, some of them we mention in proof, some we don't. Most of the ulama say that these things do not break the salah. Alright, and some of them they say that the salah is broken, they take that hadith. That's in brief. Moving forward, bid'nah ta'ala, is the issue of, we said the things that is mentioned in hadith, tayyib, do they break the salah or not? Perhaps bid'nah ta'ala will mention that in a separate class. We'll suffice ourselves what we've mentioned in this lesson, this brief lesson. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to bless us all with fiqh fi deen, understanding of the religion, proper understanding of the religion, proper application of the religion, and God making others come to the religion, giving da'wah to them, and being patient upon it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows best. This is a brief explanation of these issues. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Thank you very much for listening.